Oregon shuts down farms after something terrifying happened. Oregon has been shutting down small farms and market gardens in a pretty aggressive manner. They're even resorting to sending out cease and desist letters to these farms using satellite tech to track them down first. Their justification? Water conservation and protecting groundwater. They're wielding two laws in particular to make this happen. Let's dive into these laws and a few cases to see how they're being enforced to put the squeeze on small-scale farming. In January of this year, a court case shed light on the collaboration between Oregon's government and the dairy industry against small farmers. According to a piece in the National Review, Oregon has broadened their definition of CAFOs, or confined animal feeding operations, beyond just dairy farms. Now, this definition encompasses not only small dairy operations, but also those with chicken coops, goat farms, or any structure with a gravel or concrete floor. So what exactly does Oregon consider a CAFO? According to their definition, it's any place where animals are concentrated and fed, including areas for horses, cattle, sheep, or pigs, as well as dairy and poultry facilities, as long as the surface is prepared with concrete, rock, or fibrous material to handle wet weather conditions. This expanded definition has sparked outrage among small-scale farmers, leading to a lawsuit against the state. It's not just about the size of the operation, even those with just a couple of milking cows are feeling the heat. Take Sarah King, for instance. She runs Godspeed Hollow Farm in Newberg, Oregon, keeping things small and straightforward on her 11-acre property. With just 3 milking cows, she's hardly running a mega farm. However, according to Oregon, her farm falls under the CAFO label simply because she has a 100-foot milking station. Now, they're demanding she shell out $100,000 for infrastructure upgrades to comply with CAFO regulations. It's a massive ask for someone running a modest operation, and it's all in the name of protecting groundwater from a couple of cows standing on a milking stand. Clearly, there's a disconnect here that's causing a lot of headaches for small-scale farmers like Sarah. The way they've redefined CAFOs is sending shockwaves through nearly every corner of the farming community. This law, now enforced in Oregon, has already forced some farms to shut their doors. Fortunately, there's a temporary halt on enforcing the new definition thanks to an injunction filed by the League of Justice, which initiated a court case in January to challenge it. Interestingly, while initial impressions might suggest this crackdown is aimed at raw milk, it's actually affecting a much broader spectrum. Egg producers, chicken keepers, anyone with a chicken coop sporting a concrete floor for easy cleaning are under the same scrutiny. The permitting process and hefty requirements are simply too much for many small-scale farmers to bear. This is the first rule causing major headaches for small farmers, and it's currently a hot topic in an ongoing court case. Now, on to the second rule, which is quite the head-scratcher. In Oregon, if you're tapping into any water source, including groundwater, the only H2O you can legally collect and use without jumping through hoops is rainwater. Yup, you heard that right. All that liquid gold lurking beneath your property, according to Oregon, it's not yours. It belongs to the public even if you've got a private well. So, if you're using it for any kind of business venture, you better believe you'll need a permit. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. While this rule came into play back in 2021, its full impact is just starting to hit home. Market gardeners with plots as small as half an acre are now getting slapped with cease and desist orders, effectively telling them to find another way to water their crops. But here's the kicker. There's actually an exemption in this rule for commercial and industrial use, allowing for up to 5,000 gallons of water per day. Now, let's put things in perspective. Your average half-acre garden probably isn't guzzling anywhere near that amount of water, not even close. So why the crackdown? Even if you're just growing food for yourself, Oregon still lets you use water from your own well, but there's a cap on that too. Now let me tell you about a half-acre market garden that's become a casualty of these rules. Meet Christina Del Campo, the heart and soul behind Oak Song Farm near Eugene. For 7 years, she's been nurturing blueberries, veggies, and other local delights, selling them to neighbors and making a living from them. But recently, she got a gut punch in the form of a letter from the Oregon Water Resources Department's regional office. It basically said, "No water, no crops." According to Mike McCord, the Northwest Region Manager, water is a precious resource. and Oregon has been managing it through a permit system since 1909. Now, here's the kicker: the exemption for 5,000 gallons a day, it's strictly for one-off commercial and industrial operations. So if you've got multiple spots, you can't just cash in on the exemption multiple times. And get this, the Oregon Water Resources Department made it crystal clear that this exemption doesn't cover water and crops. So Christina's livelihood, her farm, her income, is caught in the crosshairs of bureaucracy, leaving her high and dry. Now let's dive into the nitty-gritty of Oregon's well exemptions. Here's the thing: nowhere in the regulations does it explicitly say that irrigation of land isn't covered. It's pretty straightforward. If you're a commercial or industrial user, you can snag a single-use permit for up to 5,000 gallons a day, all for a tidy $300 fee. But here's where things take a nosedive into the murky waters of bureaucracy. Oregon's now rolling out these intrusive devices to monitor water usage on folks' wells, keeping tabs on every drop they use. It's like Big Brother, but with water. And get this, these rules supposedly date back to 1909, yet they keep morphing and growing more complex over time. So it's not just one farmer feeling the heat, it's a slew of small-scale farms and market gardens getting the same ominous message: no more watering your crops. All because, according to the powers that be, irrigation just doesn't cut it under the exemption clause. It's crystal clear, this is nothing short of a full-blown assault on small farms. I mean, seriously, labeling a small farmer with a handful of milk cows and a humble milking stand as a CAFO? That's just plain absurd. These animals spend a short stint in confinement, munching away and getting milked before heading back out. And let's talk about chickens and egg production. Standard practice is to keep their food indoors to keep it dry. But guess what? That could land you in hot water too, courtesy of Oregon's loose interpretation of the law. Suddenly, they're swooping in, telling folks to shut down their chicken coops unless they fork over a small fortune for infrastructure upgrades to handle wastewater from a tiny 10 by 12 chicken house. It's one of the most egregious power grabs we've seen yet. And let's not kid ourselves, this isn't about protecting the environment or public health. It's about twisting the law to fit an agenda, plain and simple. Why else would they conveniently overlook irrigation in the exemption clause, effectively shutting down countless market gardens? It begs the question, why the crackdown on growing food in Oregon? And why target small-scale farmers with minuscule operations that hardly produce any waste or runoff? This isn't about standing up to big dairy lobbyists, it's about bulldozing over the little guys who just want to make an honest living and feed their communities. Tom Vilsack is a heavyweight in the world of dairy lobbying. I mean, this guy practically ran the show for the largest dairy farmer lobbying group out there. And let's not forget about that infamous Got Milk campaign. You know, the one that had dairy farmers shelling out cash for the cause, which conveniently lined Vilsack's pockets. Now fast forward to today, and guess who's sitting pretty at the Secretary of Agriculture? Yup, you guessed it, Tom Vilsack. It's a bit of a tangled web, really. Many dairy farmers felt like they were stuck in a bind, forced to cough up cash for programs they may not have agreed with but had no choice if they wanted to sell their milk. So, you can't help but wonder, did Vilsack's dairy cronies have a hand in pushing for these changes? Maybe they didn't like the idea of small farms being seen as anything other than CAFOs, seeing it as unfair competition. And let's face it, when it comes to playing dirty in the world of agriculture, nothing's off the table. It's a classic case of David versus Goliath, and right now, the odds are stacked against David, our small-scale farmers. These folks simply can't afford the hefty infrastructure upgrades they're being slapped with. I mean, we're talking about asking them to shell out a small fortune just to stay in business. And here's the kicker, it's a two-pronged attack hitting them from all sides. First, the market gardeners felt the squeeze last fall, followed by the small dairy farmers at the start of the year. And let me tell you, this law casts a wide net. It doesn't discriminate, it ropes in everyone from egg and chicken producers to hog raisers and dairy goat keepers. It's a dragnet that's threatening to shut down anyone and everyone who dares to grow their own food. But here's the thing, these small-timers aren't even competing with the big boys. They're just trying to carve out a living and feed their communities. I highly doubt the larger farmers lose any sleep over these small operations, but you better believe the industry groups, lobbyists, and associations have a vested interest in keeping the little guys down. It's a chilling realization. The very people elected to serve and protect the interests of Oregonians are the ones wielding these policies like a sledgehammer, systematically dismantling not just a handful of farms, but entire livelihoods. I'm talking about over 25 market gardeners getting the boot in a single sweep. Here's how they're doing it. They've set up a hotline for nosy neighbors to rat out anyone they suspect of running a market garden, selling veggies, and tapping into our precious water resources. Yup, we're talking about good old fashioned tattletales. But if that's not invasive enough, they're also turning to satellite imagery to spy on us from above. They'll spot a business license, farm name, and some crops growing on a plot of land, and bam, you're on their radar. It's downright eerie, really. We've had our fair share of discussions about it down on the farm. I mean, who wouldn't feel a bit creeped out knowing that every year those satellite images are updated, pinpointing every new building and potentially leading to surprise property tax assessments? It's like living under a microscope, with Big Brother keeping a watchful eye from above. Now, it's a story of two states, and the contrast couldn't be starker. While Oregon's busy cracking down on small farms left and right, California's grappling with its own water woes, leaving 2,500 farmers high and dry due to drought restrictions. They're barely hanging on with just 15% of their water supply to work with. And it's not a new story, it's a recurring nightmare that keeps playing out across the country. Water rights and protection, once seen as tools for the greater good, are now being wielded like a weapon to snuff out farms from coast to coast. Just look at the numbers. Since 2000, we've seen a jaw-dropping decline from 2.1 million farms to just under 1.9 million by the end of last year. And here's the kicker. The bulk of those losses have occurred in the past 4 or 5 years alone. The rate at which we're hemorrhaging small farms is unprecedented. It's like watching the lifeblood of our agricultural landscape drain away right before our eyes. And the excuses? They range from drought to, get this, trout. Yes, you heard that right. Trout, not drought, is what's sending farms under in some cases. It's enough to make you wonder, where will it end and who will be left standing when the dust finally settles? What we're witnessing in Oregon is nothing short of a power grab, with authorities seizing control of people's wells, slapping meters on them, and effectively pulling the plug on small farms, whether they're dairy operations, goat pens, or chicken coops. And all of this is being done under the guise of safeguarding our precious groundwater. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for protecting the environment. There's no denying that we've done our fair share of damage to Mother Nature, but let's be real here. I'm not exactly sold on the whole global warming CO2 spiel. However, that doesn't mean I'm blind to the fact that there are steps we need to take to ensure we're good stewards of our land. And from where I'm standing, most of the farmers I've met are dead serious about conservation. Take these market gardeners, for instance. They're not just tossing water around willy-nilly. No sir, they're knee-deep in soil science, figuring out how to maximize moisture retention and minimize waste. Compare that to the industrial behemoths out there, tilling up hundreds of acres and dousing them with sprayers. It's like night and day. These small-scale growers aren't guzzling water like there's no tomorrow. They're using it wisely, tending to their crops with care and precision. So tell me, who's really the water waster here? The way these folks manage their soil and grow their food is nothing short of impressive. Take a small dairy farmer, for instance. Their cows spend the vast majority of their time out in the open, grazing on lush pastures. And let's not forget about the small chicken farmer. Those cluckers are free to roam, pecking and scratching to their heart's content. But here's the kicker. This crackdown isn't just limited to cows and chickens. It's a wide net that could snag rabbit farmers too. We have seen setups where rabbits are kept on concrete floors but with plenty of hay and a comfy environment. Yet, according to the powers that be, even a couple of rabbits in such a space could be labeled as a CAFO. It's downright ludicrous. But here's the million-dollar question. When does the government's noble objective of protecting the public veer into overreach territory? When do their rules and regulations stop being about safety and start being about control? It's a slippery slope, my friend, and one that's leaving folks feeling like their rights are being trampled on. After all, shouldn't people have the right to use their resources as they see fit without Big Brother breathing down their necks? It's high time we start asking these tough questions and demanding answers. Access to fresh, farm-grown food should be a basic human right, but what's happening in Oregon is nothing short of a travesty. By snuffing out the operations of small-scale farmers, they're effectively robbing every Oregonian of that right. And all in the name of laws that were originally meant to rein in large-scale operations and protect groundwater. It's a classic case of twisting words and manipulating definitions to suit their agenda. And the ones paying the price? Well, it's folks like you and me. the ones who rely on these small farms for fresh produce and meat straight from the farm. It's high time people woke up to what's really going on here. This isn't about protection, it's about control. It's about stripping away our rights and our access to healthy, wholesome foods. And mark my words, other states are watching. They're taking notes and waiting to see how this plays out. And once the dust settles, you can bet they'll be quick to follow suit. It's a playbook we've seen time and time again. One state tests the waters with an overreaching policy, and if it flies under the radar, it's only a matter of time before others jump on the bandwagon. It's a slippery slope, one that we can't afford to slide down. The repercussions of Oregon's heavy-handed tactics extend far beyond its borders. It's setting a dangerous precedent that threatens to ripple across the nation. And make no mistake, this isn't just about farming, it's about fundamental freedoms. When governments start dictating how we can use our land and water, it's a slippery slope towards tyranny. It's a betrayal of the very principles that our country was founded upon. But amidst the chaos and uncertainty, there's a glimmer of hope. People are waking up to the reality of the situation. They're rallying behind small farmers, recognizing them for the true heroes they are. These aren't just businesses, they're the lifeblood of our communities. They provide us with nourishment, sustenance, and a connection to the land that's all too rare in today's world. But the fight is far from over. It's going to take a united front to push back the encroachment of government overreach. We need to stand up, speak out, and demand change. We need to hold our elected officials accountable and remind them who they work for: the people. And let's not forget the power over grassroots action. Every dollar we spend is a vote for the kind of world we want to live in. By supporting local farmers and businesses, we're sending a clear message that we won't stand for this kind of injustice. What are your thoughts on this new law? Please tell us in the comments below. Like the video if you found it helpful and share with others to do your part. Thank you.